Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Kiss my... Happy Hanukkah.
For a couple of hours out of the whole year, we are the people that we always hoped we would be.
When you look at that, isn't that glorious? It's indescribably beautiful.
Oh, Christmas tree, oh, Christmas tree. Oh, Christmas tree, oh, Christmas tree. Oh, Christmas tree, oh, Christmas tree.
Careful the icy patch!
'Tis the season to be merry.
Well, that's my name.
Tush.
It is the 30-something movie podcast, and if you are hearing the jingle bells in the background, then that means it must be December. Or in the case of this movie, it could be March. It could be Christmas too. So I have some jolly elves with me here, some very special jolly elves here with me this evening. Jeff, I don't know why you're making that face. You're not feeling jolly?
It's Jolly Elves was the name of my band in college.
Oh, okay. Okay. That makes sense. Did you have the little pointy shoes and everything?
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, you've heard Jeff's voice. Our other jolly elf.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Mark.
Oh, hi, Mark.
I did not.
Oh, boy.
I did not.
Hi,
Mark.
It's already gone off the rails. So the first of the jolly elves, you've heard Jeff. The other jolly elf we have this evening is Patrick Canigallo. Pat, how you doing?
Great, everybody. How are you doing?
Doing excellent. Doing excellent. Bo Warmbold, how are you doing?
Yo, doing well.
Yo,
Good to see everybody.
The usual Bo catchphrase. Yo. And very, very special jolly elf that we have with us this evening is Padraig from Ireland. So happy to have you back on here.
Good to be back.
So this was, we had talked, I think actually quite a while ago. It might have even been close to last Christmas time. And we were talking about, any movies because you're one of our Patreon co-executive producers. So I was kind of asking about any movies you had coming up in the next year or so that you'd want to request. And we had done the one, a Mad World. I think I put enough Mads in there, but I always forget. We had done that one, talked about that one because that had been one of your dad's favorite movies, and he had recently passed when we had talked about that one. And you had kind of mentioned that this one, since you had done that one related to memories of your dad, you said that this one you had kind of associated memories with your mom and a couple of other special things with this movie. So so I'll have you talking a little bit about that, kind of what your history with this one is, but. We'll go ahead and jump right on into this. Our movie this time, we are jumping a few years back than our normal time frame. So instead of 92, we're jumping back to 85. And this one is Santa Claus the Movie from the 27th of November, 1985, rated PG with a runtime of 1 hour and 47 minutes, directed by Jeannot Swark. I think I said that right. Might have said it wrong. Who also directed Somewhere in Time and Jaws 2. Writers were David Newman and Leslie Newman. David Newman passed away in 2003. David Newman did Bonnie and Clyde and Superman. Leslie Newman did writing for Superman 1 through 3. Producers were Pierre Spengler and Ilya Salkind. Spengler did the Superman movies and The Return of the Musketeers. Salkind did the Superman movies and Christopher Columbus, The Discovery. Music was done by Henry Mancini, who died in 1994, did Breakfast at Tiffany's and The Thornbirds. Cinematography was done by Arthur Ibbotson, who died in 1997, did Where Eagles Dare and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Editor was Peter Hollywood. He did The Adventures of Baron Munchausen and Never-Ending Story 2, The Next Chapter, which probably has more Luck Dragons in it, Pat. I haven't seen it in many, many years, but I don't know if it eats the bullies in the second movie, but I know you were really concerned with that in the first one.
That was a concern. Funny thing about a luck dragon, I was talking with a friend the other day that was showing me pictures of I think it was of her dog. What was the name of the luck dragon in Never-Ending Story?
Falcor.
Falcor. And I was thinking of the dog, and my friend was saying like, yeah, and her dog's name was something else. She goes, we almost named him Falcor, and it was like the dog was a spitting image of Falcor, and I'm like, that would have been possibly the top 3 greatest pet names of all time. And they're like, yeah, we ended up going with something else, but yeah, Falcor would have been good. So I don't know what made me think. Well, you brought it up. That's what made me think of it. But speaking of luck dragons.
Well, if their dog looked anything like Falkor, if it's like a long-haired dog with some floppy ears.
It was amazing. It was Falkor. Okay. I mean, the dog looked just like Falkor.
Then I'm going to quote Last Crusade and say they have
dog
chosen
get the
poorly.
bullies or not?
I'm going to say the dog got the bullies.
There you go.
Because I like to know, I like the happy endings.
Yeah, there we go. All right. For this one, the budget was somewhere between 30 and 50 million. The box office came in at 23.7, so did not quite make its money back. Flick Metrics gives this one a 47%, and could not find a score on this one for Cinema Score. Starring Dudley Moore, who died in 2022. He played Patch. He was in Arthur and 10. John Lithgow was BZ. He was in Ricochet and Harry and the Hendersons. David Huddleston, who died in 2016, played Santa Claus. He was the Big Lebowski and was in Blazing Saddles. Burgess Meredith, who died in 1997, played the Ancient Elf. He was in the Batman TV series and the Rocky movies. Judy Cornwell played Anya Claus. She was in the TV series Keeping Up Appearances and the TV series EastEnders. Jeffrey Kramer played Towser. He was in Jaws and Ally McBeal. Christian Fitzpatrick was Joe. He was in a movie called Vice Versa. Carrie K. Heim was Cornelia. She was in a TV show called Equalizer and a TV movie The Parent Trap 2. And Amy Delamain, who died in 1999, played the Storyteller. She was in Doctor Who and the TV series The Avengers. Not like Captain America Avengers, other Avengers. So this one kind of tells the story of the origins of Santa Claus from a regular 14th century woodcarver to becoming an international icon, delivering presents overnight to children all around the world. So we'll just kind of go ahead and get started with just a quick walkthrough of the plot for this one. Basically, like I just said, it starts with Santa Claus being just a normal kind of human being. In the 14th century, he was a craftsman, a woodcarver, and he was taking his sleigh with his couple of deer and trying to deliver these toys that he had carved to children around these different villages. And a snowstorm blizzard comes up, and he and his wife get caught. And this is where, as we were watching the movie, I was watching it with my daughter, they seemed to die. And that was kind of, my daughter was like, wow, that took a quick dark turn. And I was like, well, we're only like 10 minutes into the movie, so maybe just give it a moment. I get a feeling here.
She's kind of awesome, that one.
She is. I kind of feel like, I haven't seen this in a really long time. And I'll comment a little bit on this later. I actually thought I had not seen this movie until I started watching it. I'm like, oh, no. I vividly remember a lot of this. So when we started watching it, I'm like, I don't remember this part, but I'm pretty sure they're not going to kill Santa and Mrs. Claus in the first 10 minutes of the movie and roll to credits and that's it.
Good instinct.
I've watched a couple of movies here and there. So they are revived. There is a bright light that shows up. They are revived, and they are found by a group of people that we would know of as elves. In the movie, they are called the Vendicum. And we have characters. Dudley Moore's character Patch shows up here, and basically they say that there is a prophecy that a craftsman will come and will lead them into kind of a new era of celebrating Christmas and bringing joy to children all across the world. And that is where we kind of that starts the legend of Santa Claus as we know it. And then the movie from there, just very quickly, I'll kind of go through this quickly because we'll talk a little bit more about it and comment on it. But from there, there is a little bit of a competition between a couple of the elves as to how the toys are going to be manufactured moving forward. Patch kind of goes with maybe more modern methods, assembly line methods and automated, and it does not go well. And things start to fall apart a little bit. And so Patch is kind of, he feels like he is to blame for things going wrong. He leaves the North Pole and goes to, goes south to civilization and decides that he's going to try to make it big there to really show Santa that he can prove that, he's able to do this. Like he's got these skills. He really can do it right. And he ends up unknowingly teaming up with the less than joyous BZ, who there's this whole comical scene in the courtroom showing all the toys that BZ's company has made and how glass-filled they are and how flammable they are and all those really terrible things. And as the movie continues on, Patch teaming up with BZ starts to introduce a couple of different things that end up making their toys and their items very, very popular, almost competing with Christmas. And without really giving away the end right now, there is a bit of a showdown at the end between BZ and Santa Claus, although I don't believe the two of them ever actually meet. Santa Claus does kind of come to save the day because he needs to come and save one of the kids that has been kidnapped here, but also to save Patch as well from kind of what's been going on with BZ and their dastardly plan that they have to kind of take over Christmas. And spoiler alert, everything ends well. So as it should in a Christmas movie where they didn't die in the first 10 minutes, everything does end well and Christmas is all fine. So that is the basic plot of the movie. We'll get into more stuff. We'll talk about specific scenes as we go along. But I did want to start with, Podrick, you chose this movie. You had mentioned that, this movie was near and dear to your heart. So tell us a little bit about your history with this movie and why this movie means a lot to you.
It was actually the first movie I had ever seen in the cinema. 1985. My mother brought me. She always used to say that every time we watched it on Christmas Eve. That was the first movie I ever seen, Patrick. Oh, no, Ma. I'd say, oh, no, I know. Next year, she'd probably forget she said it to me, and, she'd say it again, oh, remember, that was the first movie I ever seen, and I absolutely loved it as well. It's a lot of sentimental value with the fact that my mother passed away a few years ago, and that was the first one that I ever seen. She reminded me every year, every time I watched it. Just as a working class kid back in Ireland dreaming of getting a bike, and we were quite poor growing up, so I never got that bike even though I was a really, really good kid. But that movie, when I was a kid, I can remember this dream, and to me David Huddleston was Santa, so I knew what he looked like. I never got to see him. We were actually one of the few kids in the class. I think I was the only kid in my class. Everybody was sent to bed early. My father would have the charade every year of us waiting up for Santa, and we'd always fall asleep before he came, of course, and get taken up to bed. But I would watch that movie dreaming every year that this year I'm gonna see Santa and I'm gonna get that bike. It never happened, but that movie, just as a kid, like, I can still picture myself. That movie just made me dream, because to me, I was looking at Santa when I seen David Huddleston. He was fantastic. I was shocked as well to find that the movie actually flopped at the time, because to me it was the ultimate movie as a kid, ultimate Christmas movie. I couldn't believe that it flopped, but then the soul coins are behind that movie, so that maybe explains it if you're a Superman fan. So
yeah.
I did read somewhere that over in England and the British Isles, it actually did a lot better.
Yeah, it did.
Than it did
Absolutely.
in the States. So.
Yeah, that's true. It was very badly marketed as well. They didn't really show Santa in much of the promotional stuff. It was mainly Dudley Moore. They pushed the fact that they had Dudley Moore. He's a big star at the time.
Sure.
But I remember watching the movie and always thinking I had a Superman 2 feel to it. So when I was listening to actually a podcast on it there last year, around about Christmas, just getting all in the mood, and when I heard the soul coins were behind it, I always thought that I had a certain Superman 2 look about it. When you're in the city scenes, I don't know what it was, the cinematography, just the color and everything screamed Superman 2, so it didn't shock me, To the same people behind that were behind Superman 2 as well, so.
Yeah, you had, because Pierre Spengler was also, he was one of the producers of those Salkind Superman movies. He was behind, I think 1 through 3. He was a producer of that. He and Ilya Salkind were like best friends. And actually, my understanding is one of the reasons that Richard Donner did not come back for Superman 2 was because Richard Donner hated Pierre Spengler, and over the course of making Superman, the first one, and all the press that they did in between the first and second, apparently Richard Donner did not hold back on his opinions about Pierre Spengler and his ability to be a producer, and said some pretty harsh things about him. So Ilya Salkind basically said, hey, that's my best friend you're saying this about. I'd rather have him work on the sequel than you, so you're fired. So apparently that was part of what did not bring Richard Donner back. I did make a funny comment, which none of my family understood when I said it. When the reindeer showed up in this, I was like, oh, look, a Salkind movie where they're actually willing to still work with the Donner.
Wow.
I was the only one that got that one. That's all right. One of the other funny things, because you mentioned that it had flopped, particularly in the States, it didn't do very well. This was a movie where they were really kind of trying to bank on, other movies had done this too, but maybe I guess a little bit more successfully. This is one of the things I did remember about this. I would have been about 5 at the time that this came out. But I remember seeing commercials on TV where they had put Christmas books in Happy Meals. So McDonald's was my restaurant of choice as a kid, which I loved. And so I'm sure we probably had some of these books, but they did books of the movies. I know.
I'm shocked by that, John.
Yeah. And I remember them putting some of these Christmas books in the Happy Meals, and I remember advertisements on TV about, go to McDonald's, get a Christmas Happy Meal. It's going to have Santa Claus the movie, the storybook inside of it. And it was one of the first times I actually remember as a kid seeing a movie tie-in related to, a restaurant, fast food place we'd go to. But unfortunately, it didn't really translate. I think they were kind of betting heavily on these movie and fast food tie-ins, bringing more people to the theater to see it. And unfortunately, I guess, opening weekend, it only made about $5 million, which is not, even in 1985, that's not a whole lot in opening weekend. One of the other interesting things that I did read about this one in terms of the actors is, because in watching this movie, and we'll talk about our kind of our take on the movie and whether we liked it or not here in a second, but I will say, as I was watching it, I had completely forgotten that I had really seen this movie before. I had vague memories of maybe seeing bits and pieces, but then as the movie went on, I was like, nope, I vividly remember some of these scenes, and I know I've seen this more than once. But it took getting into the movie for me to remember all that. But a couple things that I read about this is I remember enjoying it as a kid, but I read a couple of different interviews that some of the actors had done afterwards. And I think it was John Lithgow and maybe Dudley Moore had watched this together after the movie had been finished. And they're sitting in a private theater, they're watching it. And I guess when it was done, they turned to each other and they're like, oh, dear God, our careers are over. Like this may be one of the worst things I've ever done. And John Lithgow is quoted in an interview just from a couple of years ago as somebody asked him about it, and he said, I feel like the Santa Claus the movie was maybe one of the tackiest movies I've ever been in. It might be one of my least favorite movies I've ever been in. He said, but anytime I ever go over to England or the British Isles, anytime I go over there, he's like, it boggles my mind. This is the movie people know me for. Like everything else I've ever done, I will get approached by people in England and Ireland and Scotland and Wales. I will get approached by people and they will tell me that they loved me in Santa Claus the movie. And it just, and he was so shocked that that's the one that people will remember him for over there.
Yeah. Especially where, he nearly choked saying for free. That's a major thing over here, I think I read something before. He said sometimes people shout that to him in the streets, Yeah. But yeah, I find that as well. I have a lot of connections in the States and friends over there. And I find when I talk about this movie to Americans that don't have the same connection as people here. It came up on my Facebook there recently, 37 years ago, Santa Claus the movie was made. I shared it and just said, it's the first movie I ever seen with my mother, and back in 1985. And just loads of comments, loads of likes, everybody saying how much they loved it. None of my American friends liked it or commented, and anytime I've ever talked about it to Americans, it doesn't connect with them the same as people over in Ireland and England. We all love it here,
Yeah. That
is well, I don't know if fascinating is too strong of a word, but it's fascinating that there's that much of a divide. And I am wondering, do we have any inkling of what the critical response was to it? Like, why?
It was bad. Yeah, I wasn't.
Why did the critics? I mean, what did they not like about it? I just.
Yeah, I think it's a great movie, and even now, and I cannot wait for it to bring my own to the cinema. I was saying that to John before I got on. I was going to watch it with the kids the night before I spoke to you, but I've seen it that many times. I know every part of it. But it's at one of the cinemas here. I discovered it's showing all the 80s Christmas movies and 90s in the cinema. So it's on December the 11th. in the afternoon. So I'm taking all the kids to see it on the big screen because they've never seen it. So I thought I'm going to hang off watching it on the screen, on the TV. I can actually take them to the cinema like Guy did in 1985 and let them
that's
experience
awesome.
it and see how they like it, you know. The cinema is so cool, but they're showing National Lampoon's Home Alone 1 and 2, A Christmas Story. That's one Christmas movie that no one over here knows, but it seems to have a big cult following in the US. 1983, A Christmas Story. No one over here knows that movie.
That's a classic. They just made They just did a remake.
Yeah.
Or a sequel, technically.
That's my wife's favorite movie. Like, we will watch that even when it's not Christmas time.
Yeah. I swear to God, nobody in Ireland or the UK knows about it.
Really?
Well, honestly, I've seen some TikTok videos on an actor went and he was on the steps doing tours, and the dude who owns the house was just happened to be coming home. He went ape and told him to get the F off his. And he was
I saw this just recently.
Yeah. I only seen it 2 days ago. So it made me think this house is famous. I've never known about this movie, and it made me look into it, and I realized this is a big cult following here, and no one knows it where I am.
Yeah.
So, but you've seen that video? Interesting. I think.
I did. Well, I saw that, and it was one of those things like no one could figure out why the homeowner got so upset. Like I guess they thought that somehow the actor was exploiting it, or there was some kind of like they were trying to purchase the house, and it was
they're doing a GoFundMe, and people, he's saying that they're con men, that they're going to get the GoFundMe and not buy the house, you know. So he really doesn't like that dude. He said he's a con man kind of thing, you know. So they want to make it like a visitor center, you know.
Right. Well, I could see that. You know, I could see that. But that was. Yeah. You get in the press for all the wrong reasons when you get into one of those things.
Yeah, it's bad. It's sad. Like Home Alone, I know it's not your main movie, but I know they did an Airbnb where you could stay there for the night, and it's sold out in like seconds. You know, I think the way to spare 1.3 million a few years ago when it was up for sale, you would make it kill. Even my little stepkid, who's 10, said it to me a few days ago. I said, "What do you want? I want to, what do you want for Christmas? And what you want? I want to get a night in the Home Alone house. You know."
Yeah.
We actually got a taxi out to it. We were in Chicago. We were coming back from LA, and we went to meet Dad's old job in Paramount, you know, to see it, and went around all the movies. Would have loving it now. It was a real movie out memorabilia holiday, you know. And we had a 5-hour layover in Chicago, and I think I said this before. I got stuck in Chicago, and I never thought of it, you know. I had stuck in the night in a hotel because I missed me connect and flight back to Ireland, and I said, screw it. We got an Uber out to the house and an Uber straight back, you know. Stayed there only for 1 minute. Few photos. We had a Slovakian taxi driver who was like, "What is this house?" We're like, "Home Alone." Never seen it. I was like, "What different planet do you live on?" Dude? So I think it was $90 for the taxi. We didn't care. We got that. I got about 200 likes on Facebook. That was worth it.
Yeah, there you go.
No, good memories, because that was another movie I loved as well. You know.
Fun.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things about this movie that I, when watching it this time and recalling a lot of it as I was watching it, like I said, I completely forgot that I had seen this, and then certain scenes, I just immediately, I was like, nope, I know exactly what's going to happen next. The scenes where Patch builds his machine, and at first everything is going fine. I'm like, no, you know what? I feel like in a couple of minutes, there's going to be like this scene where like the screws are trying to go into the right holes, but everything's all wobbly and it's going to come out bad, and it's not going to work quite right. And I was almost like picturing things before they were happening. I'm like, nope, I know I've seen this one, and I think particularly one of the things I really like, especially about the beginning of the movie, and I feel like as a kid, that's probably one of the things I really enjoyed about this, was that initial scene, the story of how he becomes the Santa Claus, the Father Christmas that, we know now in the stories and the legends. I feel like as a kid, I could have just sat in that part of the movie forever. You get to the workshop, you get to the really colorful toys, and you, even to a modern audience, even to a kid in the 80s, there was just something magical, even though all the toys look very old and very like 18th, 19th century kind of, wooden toys. I feel like even as a kid in 1985, I probably watched that and was like, this is so cool. Like, all of this is so colorful. All of this is so, it's the things that when I saw Elf as an adult, I'm like, that reminds me of something, like the whole colorful Santa's workshop and the making the toys. And this reminds me of something, and I can't quite figure out what it is. And then just all of the colors when you get to Santa's workshop, and just kind of the magic of the whole thing and the majesty when he first walks into it. I'm like, aha, that's in my mind when I've got pictured a colorful, vast Santa's workshop with all these elves working and all these colorfully painted toys. That's what I picture. I just didn't remember it was from this movie.
Yeah. And that's what I was saying earlier about the Christmas Eve. I'd only ever watched this on Christmas Eve. I felt to the TV guide, and if it was on the day before Christmas Eve, I was like, no, I need. This is a Christmas Eve movie, and like I said earlier, this made me dream. Is this really what his workshop is? Is this really what he looks like? Like, to me, David Huddleston was Santa, and that made me dream. All the colors, exactly what you say there. Yeah. Seeing all the magical dust that made the reindeer fly. Yeah, that's why I actually really can't wait for December 11th to actually sit in the cinema again and watch this, you know. I'm probably burst into tears now thinking of my mother and thinking of little old me, and I used to watch it and having the kids with me, you know. To be honest, I get emotional about stuff like that, you know. So
sure,
yeah, no, exactly what you said there resonates, John. The colouring, just everything, how the reindeer flew, and how the workshop operated, and how Santa looked. To me, that was it, you know. And I can, even I'm 42 now, I can still remember the 8-year-old me, exactly what I thought and felt on Christmas Eve when I watched that movie, you know.
Yeah.
Fun. That's fun. That I don't know if you'd call it a set piece or whatever, but when you have that image of Santa's, you have the North Pole of Santa's house.
Yeah.
You know, we mentioned that the Never-Ending Story earlier, and boy, that looked like that could have been an image right out of the Never-Ending Story. It just had that magic, mystical look about it, and it's just cool looking, and it's, I don't know, just the way that looks, it makes me think of back to the 1980s, you know, of anything. Like I said, a lot of the pieces in Never-Ending Story, you know, like the images you get, or the shots, just the way the special effects looked. Yeah. It just has a very characteristic look of it. It just seems magical.
Yeah, I honestly don't know how they did it before the days of CGI, but I think I said this when I was on before. I don't really like CGI. I just, if it was a modern day film and it was CGI of that, it just wouldn't look the same. I don't know what it is with the 80s special effects. Sometimes they actually look better and more authentic than the massive, you know, technical, expensive CGI that you have nowadays. I honestly don't know why, but to me, and I'm maybe biased because I'm an 80s kid, but I think things like that house, that looks better now than what if they tried to recreate that now in a CGI setting.
Yeah.
With a green screen behind it.
Yeah. Agreed. It has a magical look to it. I wish I could describe it in other terms, but it's it's very cool looking.
One of the things that when I was reading some of the background of this, that would have made this a completely different movie is I want to say the first person that they had offered the opportunity to direct this movie was John Carpenter. Like John Carpenter. I'm like, I don't know about that.
That seems like a much different movie.
Yeah. It seems a little bit more like I'm a little, just for fun, I'm a little excited. I might go, when it comes out in the theater, might go see the one that David Harbour is going to be in coming soon, The Violent Night.
Yeah, that looked interesting. I saw it saw a trailer this morning.
Yeah, I saw the preview for that, and I'm like, I love a good, you know, bashing heads movie every now and then, and as long as I don't take it too seriously, sure, maybe I'll go see this in the theater. I feel like a John Carpenter Santa Claus the movie would be a little bit more along those lines. I don't know that I quite see it having the same magic that this one kind of has associated with it. But it was kind of funny to read, like, some of the different, some of the different takes that they had on the characters, you know, who was going to be the characters. I think Dudley Moore was pretty much always in their mind to play the main elf. I don't know that there were too many other choices for that. I believe a couple things that I had read was the Salkinds had even looked at him to be a character in the Superman movies at some point. I guess they were considering doing the imp from the Fifth Dimension, Mr. Mxyzptlk, and they were looking at Dudley Moore as playing that part. I guess that was, I think an early draft of Superman 3 was supposed to have that character in it. And
I could see that.
Yeah, I actually think he would have been pretty good at it. I think it would have been kind of fun. Yeah, they were kind of looking at, they were kind of using like some of their Superman knowledge, which is why, and I totally agree with you, Potter, when you said that, you know, some of this has a bit of a Superman 2 kind of feel to it when you get to the city, and even scenes when they're in the snow. I'm like, I would
when Superman gets beat up in the diner.
Yeah, I was like, I could totally see, like, you got this blinding light in the background. If that was the Fortress of Solitude, I wouldn't be shocked. You know, I'm getting this vibe here because it feels so similar. And I guess they kind of looked at a couple of other Superman actors to possibly take some of these parts. They had somebody for the role of BZ. They were looking at somebody like a Gene Hackman. They're like, well, we want somebody that has big star power. So we want somebody like a Gene Hackman. I don't know that they actually offered it to Gene Hackman himself. But I know that Harrison Ford was originally offered the role of BZ. That would have been totally different than the John Lithgow. I don't know that I could see Harrison Ford doing the free line. I can't see that. I see it more of a free. Are you kidding me, kid? You're going to give him away for free? No, that's not how we do it here. But just so much fun to see some of these other big name actors, even though they've got small parts in this movie. You know, seeing Burgess Meredith show up for like all of 30 seconds in the movie was just kind of fun to see him as the ancient elf, and fun to see just some of these other people pop up here and there. What I think would have been fun in particular, and I wish that I wish I was more into movies the way I am now when we lived over there, because I know that they filmed this at Pinewood Studios in England, and that was just down the street from where I lived when I lived in England. And if they were doing tours of the studios there, I would have loved to have gone to see, you know, if they had props from this movie or any of the other movies they filmed there, or you know, just so much fun stuff was filmed at Pinewood, and when I saw that this had been filmed there, I'm like, okay, I can see some similarities to some other, not that the sets are the same, but I can see some similarities to other movies that got filmed there, just from some of the kind of look and feel of things. Do you have a favorite scene in this movie? I'm going to go around and ask everybody if you've got a favorite scene in particular, or, oh, you know what? I didn't ask this one. So Patrick, you kind of already let us know that this is the first movie you saw in the theater. The rest of the guys here, is this the first time you had seen this movie, or had you seen it before?
Oh gosh, I saw it probably not right when it came out, because as you already pointed out, John, we would have been 4.
Yeah.
But soon. I mean, I saw it young. I've love this movie. I've seen it tons of times.
Okay.
It's about an every year rewatch for me.
Okay.
I say about because unlike some Christmas movies, this one's not as easy to find sometimes.
Mm-hmm. This was a first time for me. Okay. To be honest, I hadn't even heard of it before. Yeah. And I gotta be honest, this one might go in the family. What am I trying to say? This might go in the family rotation for this year. And I'm sure we'll get more into the details as we go, but especially the reindeer scenes. I know those are some of my favorite scenes, and it was, I think the kids would love it too. It's just the way they featured the reindeer, the way they kind of differentiated between the different reindeer, you know, which was the one had the monocles, and one had the monocle in one eye and one had the monocle in the, I mean, it was just, it's fun. I know I'm getting a little bit more in depth in terms of your question there, John, but yeah, this was a first time watch. And I think this, like I said, as soon as, I got done watching it, I told Tammy, I'm like, I think I got a Christmas movie we're going to watch this year. So I think the kids would really get a kick out of it.
Yeah.
That's made my day hearing that, Pat.
Yeah. Well, cheers. Thank you for the recommendation.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant. Love to hear that.
I've seen this movie so many times. I didn't get a chance to watch it for our recording tonight, but I don't feel like I have to. Like, I feel like I'm really well versed with this movie. It's one of those that I'll watch. I'll put this on like in the middle of June. Like, it doesn't have
for Christmas too.
Yeah.
Right. Like it doesn't have to be Christmas time for me to watch this. Yeah, I really like this movie. And of course, now looking at it with a more critical lens, there are things that I find interesting about it, odd about it, that hopefully we can discuss in a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely not my first time seeing this movie at all.
You know, I'm gonna back up. Jeff and I were talking a little bit about the movie earlier today, and I'll freely admit especially growing.
What was that? What are you going to say about this, Pat?
I was going to say I don't see a lot of Christmas movies, and like when I was telling. Well, because I think what I told you when I saw you today, I'm like, I don't see a lot of Christmas movies, and your answer was, well, because you hate Christmas, and then my response was something like, yeah, bah humbug or whatever. But it's funny because like for my family, we had our go-to Christmas movies that we would just watch every year, and it was the one that you mentioned earlier, A Christmas Story, and then National Lampoons, and those were the two that like we would just go back to, and so. I'm always fascinated when we get to this time of year because, just about all the rest of you guys on the podcast see many different Christmas movies and so on. And Bo, I'm always fascinated with, don't you watch like, not A Christmas Story. What am I trying to say?
Christmas Carol.
Christmas Carol. And I think don't you watch like, you've seen every version of the Christmas Carol and you watch like 6 of them every year? Or
I can't claim to have seen every version because every year I find more, but yeah, I try to have caught them all. And I usually see 4 or 5, 6 of them a year. I was actually just combing through all the streaming services and all of the video options I have to see what I could grab. And there's always a couple. It's so weird. It's like how this one's hard to find. There are some that every year I have trouble with. There's a great animated one called Christmas Carol, the movie. That is a challenge to find every year.
Right.
But I tracked it down on, it might have been on Pluto, like one of the stranger streaming services. And oh, no, it wasn't that. You know what it was? It was Canopy and Hoopla through the library.
Oh, there you go.
What? But found them.
That's deep.
Whatever works, man.
Right.
Well, yeah. I mean, and so, like I said, like, not to be pointing the finger and say all of you, but you guys definitely see more Christmas movies frequently. I'll happen upon things. So, like I said, the flip side is I've never seen this movie. I had never heard of it. And so, whenever we're able to get another movie and kind of throw it in the rotation, that's always exciting. And it's fascinating to hear you guys talk about it and say, this movie was really what kind of established the way you think of Santa's Workshop and the way you see Christmas and, the color and just kind of that old world toy kind of image. Just because I don't frequently see a ton of different Christmas movies, unless it's like a recommendation or so on. I'm always like, okay, well, did this come first? Is this, because it seems to have that like look to it. So it's always like, okay, am I, why is that? Was this one of the first movies that did that? Or is it one of anyways, I'm kind of like rambling on, but the point is I don't see a lot of Christmas movies. So it's always exciting to come across one that just, is this much fun. And, like I said, has this feel to it. And John, I'm kind of getting ahead of it because I know we're going to get into the things you like and all that. But boy, I am shocked that John Lithgow was so apprehensive about his performance, because like I told Jeff today, that guy seems to be like movie gold, and whatever he's in, he just always brings his A game. And I was so entertained watching him. you know, just completely the mustache twirling bad guy, like even hearkening back to those like 1960s esque like bad guys, right? You know, like totally out of the Great Race. Push the button, Max. That kind of a bad guy, just so over the top with things. He was just so good in this. Just so good in this. So there you go. You got that and more for what was the first time I saw it? Well, I think it was actually 2 a day, because I think I saw it on the 27th. 2 a day to the day it came out. So fun stuff, and just a great movie. Nice.
I will add, so just real quick, while you were talking about other Christmas movies, and you'll probably appreciate this one. When I was driving one of the kids somewhere, and then I came home, and my wife and my daughter were watching a different Christmas movie that they had found. I think it's on Netflix. And I don't know if you've seen it or not. Pat, you and your kids might like this, because there's several actors in it who had been in the Harry Potter movies. There's a movie called, I think it's called A Boy Named Christmas. Has anybody seen that one?
No.
Okay. It actually was, at first when we put it on, I mean, it's a newer movie. It's probably from, like within the last couple years or so. And at first I'm sitting down and watching it. I'm like, oh yeah, this is one of those like new Christmas movies that's trying to be, the spirit of Christmas. And it's, it's not going to be good as these classics. But as we're watching it, I'm like, you know what? Actually, this is pretty good. And it was what kind of made it really interesting was having just watched Santa Claus the movie. We're then watching this movie, A Boy Named Christmas, and it's very similar. Like how this one, at the beginning of this movie, it's the origin story of Santa Claus. It's how he became the Santa Claus of legend that we know. This movie, same kind of idea. It's a little boy, and the king of their country has commanded that someone bring him, like it's all very hopeless, and commanded that someone in the kingdom bring him an example of hope to inspire the kingdom. And the whole story is he's got kind of his pet reindeer that he travels around with. He's got a little talking mouse that he kind of travels around with, and it's live action except for the mouse. But it's kind of, there's little hints here and there that eventually this boy, his name is Nicholas, and his mom used to call him Christmas after her favorite day of the year, and you very much get the idea that this is also the origin story of Santa Claus, of Father Christmas, and it actually ended up being a really fun movie, or like a really cute movie. So it was a good, my recommendation would be, if you wanted to pair Santa Claus the movie with like another kind of modern movie that what's the phrase, a spiritual successor to Santa Claus the movie, I'd say that's probably not a bad one to kind of pair it with. I think it's on Netflix, but it actually ended up being a really good little movie, and there's at least 2 or 3 Harry Potter alum in there.
We have seen this movie, and I think it was something that and again, Tam, wasn't me that sought it out, but Tammy was like, hey, that looks really good. And as you're describing it, I'm like, yes, we have seen this movie.
Okay.
So
awesome.
Yeah. Cool.
Well, back to Santa Claus the movie. What are some of the things you loved about this movie? Are there specific scenes? Is there a line? Is there, is it every time that Dudley Moore replaces the word self with the word elf, and builds up his elf confidence? What is it? What are some of the things that you really enjoy about this movie? Is there a particular scene or a particular joke that they do in this?
I like the origin stuff.
Yeah,
just like the unique take on the origin of the character and mythos of Santa Claus.
Yeah,
like here's a guy that seemingly does what Santa does, right? He goes and visits villages to bring toys to young children, and they carry in that mythos of Santa, and then they take this real person and put him in a position where he ends up assuming the identity of Santa Claus for all the children of the world. Yeah. I liked that. I thought that was a really neat way to bring in the idea of Santa Claus.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think I said earlier that I could have watched, and not that I didn't also enjoy the second half of the movie, if you would have just kept going with that, like if the first half of the movie had continued on and you never brought this to modern day and an American city and any of this other stuff, I could have totally, if you just continued on and did a movie that kept itself in the North Pole the entire time, I would have been totally fine with that too.
Yeah.
I like it when they first meet him. I'm sorry, I just interrupted. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's almost like a learner guide for kids. For me as a kid, I always think back what I used to think when I was watching the movie. And like what Jeff was saying there, it's a great little explanation almost of how Santa came into being. I always look at it in the context of me as an 8-year-old kid watching in Dublin, watching it on TV on Christmas Eve. What I thought, like I said, to me, I was like, that's probably what his workshop looked like. That's what probably Santa looks like. The whole origins of the story. It was a great little explainer to me. He's like, oh, that's how he came about. That all makes sense. And I know I'm 42 years of age now, but I can still remember the context that I watched it in as an 8-year-old. Exactly what Jeff said there. It was a great kind of almost like beginner's guide as to how Santa came into being. I think it's a perfect movie for kids. And it's great even you watching it as a I don't want to say middle-aged man, but I don't know. 40-year-old. You're over 40, surely.
I am.
So it's great to hear even you watching it for the first time. You really liked it as well. So
yeah, and it's like, well, we watch a lot of, we watch a lot of comic book movies and Marvel movies and all that, and origin stories are always and I mean, I'm thinking back, and it's funny. All the different Batman movies, there's many times, and I think we've even discussed it here. Hey, we all know the Batman origin story. We don't need to see it again. We don't, because realistically, the origin story of Batman is like going to always be the same, right?
Yeah.
But for I almost said Santa Man, but for Santa Claus, you kind of, as long as you don't make it too over the top, you can really do different takes on those origin stories, right? And it's, to quote our often used quote from the Karate Kid, and guys, please don't pick on Bo tonight, but to often use that quote from the Karate Kid, it's like, if done right, no can defense.
Yeah.
It's like that. As long as it's an interesting story, you can really not do you can kind of do what you want with the origin story. And so that's where you can kind of get the double shot. Wow, this was a really good origin story. We really like it. Yeah. / it can be completely unique to the next Santa Claus movie that you see in terms of origin stories. So it's kind of a fun, it's kind of a fun genre to have an origin story for, because you can be unique, fresh, and excited. You know what I'm saying? It's totally. That's an area where writers can take some artistic license and really do creative things, Totally. So it's fun. I was just gonna say, I like when they meet the elves for the first time and they're all looking around, and then the Patch is crawling under the sleigh and like, oh well, he's still using the such and such on this one. Like he's like, like the guy looking under the hood of the car, he's like, we can soup that, we can change this, we can alter that, we can, and he's already like checking it all out. And I thought that was pretty funny. So that's good.
I think my favorite part, as I kind of mentioned earlier, was the first introduction of the workshop. Like when you first get in there and just how bright and colorful everything is. And it magnified my enjoyment of that scene to then read behind the scenes stuff and find out that every toy that was made in this movie was donated to like children's shelters and things like that after the movie was done. So I'm like, okay, that's already very awesome. Like the fact that just how colorful it was, how much fun this was to watch as a kid. And then to find out that, they took all of that and donated it to kids who needed toys after this was all done that's just, icing on the cake. The other thing, the other comment I was going to make kind of in general about the movie, and I think why, even though some people malign it and have a little bit of a harsh criticism of it, is I felt like, and especially watching it as an adult after not having seen this for a very long time, I was trying to, in my own mind, I was like, there's something and I almost use the word weird. I'm like, there's something weird about this movie. Like, I remember it, and now as I'm watching it, I'm starting to remember that I really liked this as a kid. I really had fun watching this as a kid, and watching it as an adult, there's just something a little weird about this movie, and I couldn't quite picture what it was until we kind of started to get through all those scenes at the beginning, the origin of Santa and the workshop and the elves and everything else, and it kind of finally hit me. I was like, this movie is really sincere. Like, it's not cynical. It's not trying to like satirize anything. It's not poking fun at anything. It's not, and I love Elf, the movie, just as much as the next person. But it's kind of it seems like there are moments where it's this unique, I don't even know if it's unique, but like the take on this movie is, we're going to seriously present you with a take on the origin story of Santa Claus, and just take it at face value. And like, I think as
your place.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's a weird tonal shift in this movie, and it loses its sincerity at some point.
Is it when it gets to the city?
It might be when it gets to the city.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, probably when it gets to the city. And I feel like it loses some of that sincerity. I feel like at that point they start treating Santa a little bit as if he's too naive to the ways of the world in the 80s. And like, I feel like he'd be more aware of, if he's keeping track of the good boys and girls and the good people and the bad people, he'd be more aware of like how the world is working at that point. So I just feel like there's a weird shift in the tone that doesn't quite balance in the movie. Now, again, I watch this movie a lot, so it doesn't stop me from watching it. But looking at it with a critical eye, that is something that I bump on. Is just like, it starts out so sweet and sincere and this precious Christmas thing. And then it just like it's not that anymore. And even though they try to bring it back to that and keep visiting that, try to get that moment back, there's something about how hard it hits in the city that it just doesn't quite come back to that sincerity that it started with for me.
Yeah. And I think I agree with you on that, because it's the scenes once we get to the city, and it's the scenes with Beezy and Patch. I mean, and those are fun. Like, don't get me wrong. Those are fun scenes. I don't think that's maybe a little bit too harsh. I don't think I enjoy those scenes quite as much as I do the scenes that take place at the North Pole. Just because I really enjoy those scenes. The other ones are still fun. Like, I get huge Third Rock from the Sun vibes as John Lithgow is playing this character. But I agree with you on that point. Like, I think it loses a little bit of the magic kind of once we get to the city scenes, and tries to regain it again by the end. And I think as a kid watching it, I wouldn't have noticed that shift as much. And watching it this time, I do. But I do think the beginning, like the first half or so of the movie, the first third of the movie, it's almost the sincerity of that beginning almost feels weird compared to a lot of movies now.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying there. It's almost comparatively, it's almost too sincere. It's too gentle, because we're now so conditioned to just waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Right.
And the fact that you get so far into the film before anything like that happens, you're like, is this movie just going to melt my heart the entire time?
Right.
Because I'm okay with that. I could use something. I'm fine with that. I'm not used to that happening. So let's keep it going.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was just one of the areas where critically I kind of bump on the movie.
Okay. Is there anything, Patrick, I was going to ask you, is there anything, I know you're saying this is the first movie you saw in the theaters and you've loved this movie. Is there anything about this movie now when you watch it again as an adult, is there anything that kind of hits you a little bit different when you watch it now?
A little, like I would get a bit, like I say, when I was a kid, I never got that bike. I was a very, very, very good kid. So I relate to Joe never getting what he wanted as a kid.
Yeah.
Although I'm not sure Joe was that good a kid, in fairness. But I always say this to my other half: if you had me as a kid, you would have loved me. I just never get back cheek. I was just genuine. So I used to see other kids that were really bad in school, and they'd get really nice bikes, and I'd say to my father, "How come such and such got a bike? He's really bad. How come? I thought you have to be good." And I don't know. I probably broke his heart. You know, he probably killed him that he couldn't get me what I wanted. So watching it back as an adult now, when I see, you know, Joe saying how he never got what he wanted and what he asked for or whatever, that would hit me, because I could relate to that in myself, you know. Because again, I used to watch this movie on Christmas Eve and dream of that bike, thinking I've been so good and my school reports are great, and it never came. And again, me saying to my mother and father, how come such and such got a bike, looking at this other dude out on his new bike on Christmas, you know. So it hits me now. I look back on, I must have broke their heart saying that, so I'm not realising, you know, what I was doing to them. Because you just didn't have it. I remember even listening to the Commitments episode, and Pat was saying how Dublin was, you see the nice hills, but there's a lot of poverty. Although Ireland's completely different now. We probably have one of the highest standard of living in the world, but in the 80s and 90s, Ireland was a different place. Now I don't think many kids, if they want a bike, they're going to get one, you know. You know, now, but in the 80s, I mean, I think we had to rent our TV in the 80s. That's how bad it was. We actually didn't own our TV in the 80s and 90s, you know. So it hits me now. I always, and I'm sure I'll watch it now, and I'll probably have a bit of a lump in my throat, and I'll watch the scenes where kids are talking, you know, Joe was talking about, you know, getting what he wanted. I'll relate to that, definitely. So as an adult now, and I think now, I don't know if you are the same, but I think, and I know talking to people from my friends in the 80s, we were all in the same boat, you know. We hadn't got much. We were from that kind of area that you would have seen in the Commitments movie. We all have the same thing where we try and overcompensate now with our kids, you know. Anything they want, we have to get. We can't have them feeling like we did when we were growing up, you know, thinking, why didn't I get this? And so, yeah, that's the one thing that would hit me now as an adult, that, yeah, I can relate to Joe in some ways. I wasn't on the streets, I wasn't that poor.
Right.
But being where he talks about not getting what he wanted and things like that would hit me now as a father. I can relate to that going back as a kid, you know.
Yeah.
What I got, I was happy with, though. I will say, when I woke up and there was toys at the end of the bed, it was the only time of year I got toys. So I will say I absolutely love Christmas. That's what with this movie. I live for Christmas Eve. And again, I think it was the only one in the class that was allowed to stay up. Everyone was put to bed at 7, 8 o'clock. I always was allowed to stay up, which is weird. I still don't think I've ever met anyone in my life that said, yeah, we were allowed to stay up and wait for Santa, or Santa as you call him. And I always missed him by 5 minutes, by the way. Always 5 minutes. So
that's always fun.
I get him.
That's fun, and that's a fun tradition. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, it was, yeah. I literally couldn't wait for the TV guide to come out for Christmas and look up Christmas Eve and plan my TV up until I'd say to me, Dad, what time did he make it? 2:30 a.m. Okay, and I'd plan my TV schedule, what would keep me awake till 2:30. That was the only time we were ever allowed to watch what we wanted on the TV, was Christmas. Every year, my dad was like Stalin. We weren't getting that remote, you know. I'm the adult, you know. So, yeah, Christmas, he was cool. He let us stay up, and yeah, again, I thought that was so cool. I was allowed to stay up on Christmas Eve. So I plan all these movies and go, okay, I watch this movie from midnight to 2. That'll nearly take me to 2:30. He came at 2:30 last year. Just these little silly things that I remember now as an adult, you know. Now my kids are up to bed. I don't let them stay up.
What great memories. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. That's fantastic.
Yeah, no, I'd be sentimental, you know.
I feel like the rest of us need to go in and send you a bike this year. Somehow get you a bike. It breaks my heart that you never got the bike. I want to do something about that. No. I'm a spoiled brat now. I look at I spoil myself these days. But it's funny, we have a bike up I won't say where. Little Emma's getting this year, so you know, it's now my time to give bikes, you know. So
right,
yeah.
That's fun that you say that. You know, your dad always let you stay up, and you know you'd always miss Santa by 5 minutes. You know, and it's funny because I think back and I don't think I could stay up for anything if I ever wanted. So I think that was something that my parents would always probably just say, "Yeah, Patrick, you go ahead, you just stay awake. That's fine." Because they know you know, I'd be asleep, 4 or 5 minutes. You know, I'd be out one way or the other. But yeah, that's just that excitement. You know, just that excitement of anticipation, because my kids will do that now. They'll be just like, I can't sleep. I hear them as a father. You hear your kids rolling around, rustling around in bed, and is everything okay? I can't sleep. I just can't sleep. And that, like that overtired excitement kind of keeping you awake thing. That's pretty cool.
That's
pretty cool.
My oldest Thomas has already told us that he's planning on staying up to see Santa.
Oh, yeah. Don't let it visit this podcast. I give him ideas.
He doesn't have a plan, but he knows that I'm going to stay up. And I told him, I said, well, I used to try the same thing, and I would always fall asleep. And the next morning, I'd find out I missed him. So you can try, but I don't think it's going to work. I always miss him by 5 minutes.
What time do your kids all wake up at? I'm curious to. What time do they wake up?
My kids will wake up usually between 6:30 and 7:30.
Yeah. It's I think I was about 5 to 6 a.m. I always remember this because I grew up in a housing estate in Dublin. It was a council estate, a social housing kind of estate, and people would be out at 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m., all playing out on their new bikes and their skateboards and everything else. And I remember that doesn't happen anymore because everybody gets video games, and like our little Rory got a PlayStation 5, so he never left the house on Christmas Day. Whereas when I was a kid, kids went out and played at like literally 5 and 6 a.m. I'm not kidding. It'd be pitch black and kids being. I don't know if that happened in the States. Would that be a thing? Or
I don't think they'd be outside playing.
Probably not that early in the morning.
This is the 80s now.
Probably depending on where in the States they live. I mean, weather permitting.
Yeah.
But I know that a lot of kids would probably wake up earlier than usual because of the excitement, but I don't like, I always grew up and the way that, now that as a father, we do things is like, I try to keep it on a schedule. Like, well, the clock has to say this time before we can start opening presents. So the kids aren't going to like run downstairs and tear into everything and be ready to play right away. They know that they're going to have to wait a little bit until everyone's up and ready and we're good to go. Cause, but yeah, I don't know. I've never seen anyone else outside early in the morning playing around with stuff, but
so we would always actually kind of sleep in on Christmas morning because my dad was really impatient. And so it kind of went back to when he and my mom got married, and my dad's family was in Texas and my mom's family was in Missouri. And so one night they would go see one of the families on Christmas Eve night and open presents Christmas Eve night. And then they would go drive the 6 or 8 hours or whatever it was to see the other family the next morning. And then they'd open presents, Christmas morning or later in the day on Christmas. Once they got there, they would open their presents on Christmas. So my dad being super impatient to, open presents and give presents and everything else and see, the kids open their presents. Our tradition growing up was you always open your gifts on Christmas Eve night. And so that growing up, I thought that's what everybody did. I was like, Santa comes at some point before Christmas Eve and drops off all the presents and we open them all Christmas Eve night. Of course, then we stay up and play with them a lot Christmas Eve night. And so then we fall asleep at like 11 o'clock, midnight, 1 in the morning after playing with all of our toys. And then you sleep in until about lunchtime on Christmas Day. So then when I got married, my wife's family, they do the whole Christmas morning thing. And I remember the first couple of years of that, I was like, oh, this is so difficult. Like I'm so used to it. Can we open like one present Christmas Eve? No, we have to do that. So now we have, the kids Christmas morning, we do it all Christmas morning. And the one thing they have to wait for is everybody, all the adults, we have to sit down and have breakfast first. So we're always going to have breakfast. We're going to have a coffee cake. We're going to have some other stuff. And as soon as the adults have had their coffee and we have the coffee cake and everybody's finished with breakfast, then we'll go into the living room and then we'll open presents. So my daughter, every single year, she's like, could we like get up a little earlier and like start breakfast maybe like half an hour earlier than we normally do? Like, and you guys eat too slow. Like you need to eat faster so that we can get this done and get in there and start opening. So every year she lobbies for a quicker, earlier breakfast so that we can get going with all this.
It's fun.
That's the first time I've ever heard someone had their presents on Christmas Eve, John. That is the first time I've ever heard that in my life, to be honest.
And I was so used to it
Yeah,
growing
I've never
up.
heard that.
I was so used to it growing up that it was weird to do it any other time. Like when I met my wife and they're like, "Oh yeah, we open on Christmas morning." I was like, "Really? Why?" Because that's what you do. You open. You're like, sometimes the gifts don't even show up under the tree until Christmas morning. I'm like, whoa, hold on. Like, our gifts are under the tree.
Blown.
Like, Santa Claus comes in like early December and puts all the gifts under the tree. Like, what is this? Like,
more of a Saint Nick festival, of Saint Nicholas
like
type
a
of
Saint
family,
Nicholas, like a December 6th kind of a deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was weird to me the first time we had to do it on Christmas morning.
Huh. That's interesting.
Well, is there anything else in kind of wrapping up our discussion of Santa Claus the movie, which, if you have not seen it, as I think Patrick had mentioned or a couple other people had mentioned, this is not always an easy one to find. So if you're looking to find this one, I think it's either I think you probably purchase it online somewhere. There might be a couple places where it's streaming, but this can be a little bit of a challenging one to find sometime. But I think well worth your time if you do get a chance to find this one. It is if you're a John Lithgow fan, it is fun to see him play the mustache twirling villain that he plays in this one. Even though I don't think he has a mustache, but he twirls his imaginary mustache as he delivers his different lines in this one. My favorite line of his is, "A sequel, we'll call it Christmas 2."
It's actually, now this is obviously not every time, but is currently at this point, if someone's listening to this, available on Prime streaming and Disney Plus.
Okay.
Really?
Nice.
But as we know, things pop on and off of streaming services, so your mileage may vary.
They come and go.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I mentioned the other thing that I bumped on with this movie.
Yeah, go for it.
And this is when I watched it as a kid.
Yeah.
I always felt that they got the toys wrong, or the type of toys wrong, especially for the time period. No, I didn't see it right away. I probably saw it maybe 86, 87. But even in the present day of the movie, I felt like, what? I haven't seen a kid ride a wooden scooter. And I don't know if ever. So I always felt like their transition in showing progression of time, and that Santa has been being Santa for years and years and years and years and years and years. Right. I just felt like they missed on present day with the toys that they decided to use in the movie to represent present day. And I never could figure out why. And maybe it's because the wooden toys worked well for the assembly line idea. And in Santa's workshop, you could you definitely get the idea, like they're building these things by hand and Patch's machine to try to increase supply. But I always felt like, who would want to play with these toys? This is not on my Christmas list. I don't know what these things are.
It's Christmas magic, Jeff. It's Christmas magic, and now who's being cynical? And now who hates Christmas?
Patrick Miguelo. To be fair, Patrick told me this morning. I believe his comment was, "This isn't his go-to
genre."
Yeah,
that's exactly what I was saying. Like, I don't.
And I didn't call him Scrooge. There was no bah humbug.
No, you just were like, yeah, that's because you hate Christmas. And I believe you said it. I believe you said that in the hallway as like kids were walking by giving me this look. No, well, and that's the thing. Like, I'm thinking back to all the Christmas, like Ernest Saves Christmas, saw it at a sleepover, friends recommended. They, like just going down the line, we had the two go-to movies. But all the other ones were like friends recommended, or someone says, check this out, and all that kind of thing. But I was going to say, as far as the wooden toys, wasn't that the idea that like Santa was why he needed to do the upgrades is because he felt like he was out of touch, right? Like, I mean, and maybe I got it wrong, but wasn't there the scene when Santa's sitting there and he's bummed out and the person says, we've developed a new doll. And Santa's like, does it fly? And then the guy's like, it wets itself or something like that. And the music's like, bum, 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 you know? And I mean, I know they weren't going for a laugh, but I mean, even in that scene where you just, you know, Santa's down and out at this point, but wasn't that kind of part of the thing is that he was trying to do his upgrades so that his toys were more current?
Yeah, I guess, but I just felt like they never got there. Like they never reached the upgrade to represent what toys of the mid 80s were.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of my thought was that was kind of done on purpose, like to kind of keep it almost like a frozen in time kind of deal, where because you have these kids, if this really and truly was real kids in the mid 80s, kids are not going to be throwing a kid up against a chain link fence saying, well, you know, Santa Claus makes crappy toys and you can't trust him to make good toys. I mean, that's not a comment a normal kid is going to make in real life, in the real world. So I always thought that the fact that you saw kids in the mid 80s riding around on toys that looked like they were designed for kids in the, 1880s, was always kind of a way of almost like freezing the innocence and magic of Christmas in time. Now, unrealistic in terms of like what actual 80s kids would have played with, but that's kind of that was the take I could.
Don't put it in the 80s then, because that loses its, like if that was the reason why they decided to do that, to kind of make the movie itself a bit more timeless, then don't put the setting in the 80s.
But how are you going to get the evil 80s businessman?
Well, then you need to have everything else. Like it doesn't line up. It doesn't align.
Okay.
I did think the same as Jeff growing up as well. I remember thinking I really want the bike, but I don't want that piece of wooden crap that the kid is. That's being honest. No, I do have to see Jeff's. I think the scene that Pat talks about where he's depressed, I think his thing was that Patch was outshining him with his toy that made kids fly. I don't think it was that he was like, my toys aren't up to grade. I think it was his depression was brought on by Patch maybe showing him up a bit that his toys were falling apart, and Patch was leading the being a trailblazer, so to speak, in the world with kids, with this amazing invention. I think that's more what that scene was setting.
Got it.
I honestly did think the same. Again, I look at it in the context of me as an 8-year-old growing up watching it on Christmas Eve. I thought the very same thing as a kid that Jeff did. I thought these toys are pretty crap, and toys now are better. What's he doing making that? I honestly did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but again, I watch this movie a lot, so it's not like I'm sitting there going, well, that just ruins it. But if we're here to talk about movies in a critical way, that's something that stands out to me. Is like, it's got to, there needs to be an alignment. It's like, when I see a production, or recently, not recently, when I worked at a theater, we did a production of a play called Bleacher Bums. That's about the Chicago Cubs or Cubs fans sitting out in the bleachers in the 1970s. And we put this thing on in the 2010s, right? In the 20 teens. And there was some response to it as, well, why wouldn't you update the players' names used in the play so people know who you're talking about? Well, if we did that, the movie wouldn't make sense because the bleachers wouldn't ever be empty. Or the play wouldn't make sense because the bleachers would never be empty. The whole idea is that the Cubs were so bad. It was the bleacher bums were those regular guys that showed up to every game, and there was so much space around them. But if you're going to update one part of it, then you need to be able to update the whole thing, and the concept wouldn't work. I feel the same way with this movie. If you're going to update and drop this movie in the present day of its time, then everything should come along with it. If you want to make a choice that's going to make it seem timeless, then you can't, I don't know. It just, the two parts don't add up for me.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, and the irony is they play it off as a laugh, but now they have dolls that wet themselves.
Right. Now it's cool.
Mm-hmm. It's cool to pee your pants.
I'm just saying that the montage where all the toys I'm just saying the montage where all the toys were falling apart, and then the one goes down the hill and gets run over by the bus.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that they were necessarily playing that for laughs, but I mean, the cynical side of me was like, oh my gosh, that's terrible, kind of thing.
Well,
that's
what
that
I have to
scene was-
say about that one, though, I felt like that one bothered me because I felt like they're trying to show that all Santa's toys were falling apart, but then they show it getting run over by a bus. That's not Santa's fault.
I thought that too.
This is the scene where I had flashbacks to the Superman movies, especially Superman 2, when all the things are falling apart and you've got like this steady stream of, okay, well, this kid's thing is falling apart. Now this one gets run over by a bus. Now this one, like, it made me think of the times where, like when Zod and the other Kryptonian criminals are standing in the street and they're blowing their super breath, and you see just one right after the other, like horrible things happening, like somebody, a phone booth toppling over, or it topples over a fire hydrant and water is going everywhere, and some guy's trying to talk on the phone to his mother and he gets blown away, and a newsstand, newspapers blow in people's faces, and like it's one catastrophe after another. And I got the same vibe from that scene when you like see all the stuff start to fall apart. I'm like, okay, this is totally, I'm getting another vibe from the Superman producers here, and I'm feeling a little bit like this is a Superman 2 moment.
Funny stuff.
All right. Is there anything else that we want to say before we wrap up? Anything we want to leave the people with in terms of why they should go check this movie out?
I think it was all in the episode. It's just like I found it a good, not like in terms of, well, it was good, okay, but just good as opposed to bad. It didn't have that cynical kind of thing like we talked about. I think it was just a fun story of Christmas with a lot of heart to it.
Absolutely.
Summed it up. That's it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Padraig, for recommending this one to us. I mean, every single one of your recommendations, it's either ones we haven't seen in a long time, or, just always fun movies to go back and look at, and not ones, this one, like I said, I had forgotten about. So without your recommendation to do this for the show, I'm not sure that I would have remembered to go find this one, go back and look at it again. And it was fun to see it and fun to, as I was going through, kind of remember along the way.
What would be another one you would recommend to us? Doesn't have to be Christmas. Doesn't have to be holiday. I'm just curious as to.
I actually have one in mind for Pat, because I think he's a Michael J. Fox fan, and I figure not next year, the year after. There's a movie called Greedy that he was in that is absolutely brilliant. And I don't think I mentioned it, I think, before when I was forced on, but I was thinking in 1994 I'm going to be recommending a movie called Greedy with Michael J. Fox. I think it's one of his best movies, and it's one no one really knows about. I think Pat would really love it, so I'll have that in my head when 1994 comes along.
Nice.
Yeah, it's, I know you're like me. I really like Michael J. Fox. Remember The Sure Thing? Not The Sure Thing. There's other Doc Hollywood and everything else. I said it on the Sure Thing episode I was on, but a movie called Greedy is a fantastic film from 1994, and I remember thinking I must recommend that to you when it comes to not next year, the year after, to say make sure you do an episode on that, because it is brilliant.
I've never heard of that movie, but
I haven't either.
I really, really like it.
I just looked up who's in it, and it's Kirk Douglas, Michael J. Fox, Olivia Dabo, Phil Hartman. There's a ton of people.
Wow.
It's brilliant. I really like it. And again, it's a real nice end and real wholesome movie in the end, and
fun.
Yeah, it's just, I really like Michael J. Fox. So and again, there's movies that I'm shocked that no one knows. So I kind of keep that in my head for the year after next year. I had that in my head to say to you is make sure you do Greedy, because it's a brilliant movie no one knows about.
Well, I look forward to watching it. Like everyone's been. Yeah, that's right. I'll wait until 94, so I get the first time viewing for when we record it. But like everyone's saying, your recommendations have always been great, and you're right. We've talked about, Michael J. Fox is just amazing.
Bad World is such a great movie. I'm bummed I missed that episode, but that is such a
I remember, I think it was Dennis. He had a connection with his father with that movie. So when I was listening to that part of the episode before I came on, I was devastated. It was just a stupid night for me to say, oh yeah, I'll do Friday at 1 because I was still in the bar. I couldn't leave. I was just far too busy, you know. Yeah. It was just one of them Fridays where it just got way busier than what I thought, you know. So I missed it, and I was devastated after. When I listened back, I was especially devastated when Dennis was saying that he had a connection with his father with it, because that's the only reason. Because my father worked on the set with him, so it is a brilliant movie. No one knows it as well, you know. And over here, I said, "We worked on It's a Madman Man of the World." And then when I showed him IMDb and showed him the cast, they're all like, "I know him, I know him, I know her," and I'm like, "This is what I'm saying. This was a really big movie in the day, you know." And apparently, like, Paramount was out of top 5 studios at the time. That was a big movie for them to do. Was trying to relaunch the studio. I know this because I did the tour in July, you know. So it's really cool. And I actually got to see where he worked. And I remember asking the tour guide, like, "Has this place changed the outside?" And he's like, "No, it's this is the way it was when your father would have worked here." So it was really, really cool, you know. And I listened to the episode. I was delighted you all liked it as well. I kind of knew you would. It was I think it was ahead of its time slightly, that movie. So I'm really proud that my father worked on it as well. Because I think he was the one he was most proud of. He always, when it was on, was watch this and try and see me when the movie drops from the crane, you know. Yeah. He would tell the same stories, but, you know, that's what you do. You forget that they tell you, and then they tell you again a year later, you know, for the 50th time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
No, I'm glad you enjoyed the recommendation. Like, I remember Brewster's Millions and Mr. Destiny. Oh, yeah. I always got a kick that I'd always think, I knew they'd like that. I knew they'd like it. I must get the thinking cap on, see if I know any more come to mind. But no, Greedy is the next one in 2 years' time. And I won't forget, I'll be on Twitter tagging John.
I've already made a note of it for the 2024 slate. So.
Cool.
Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Potter. We always have fun chatting with you and always have a great time having you on the show. And
thanks for sticking around. I know this is really taxing for you tonight to stay up.
Yeah,
have to say it's great having you.
Yeah, I work from home in my day job anyway. I have a day job and I do the bar in the evening, so I have to get out of bed at 9:15 in the morning to start work at 9:30. It's not too bad. I'll still get a good 6 hours sleep. So
awesome. Well, we have a lot of great stuff coming up this month. This is the beginning of the month of December for us. Our theme is mostly Christmas because most of the movies are Christmas movies. So we have got our Patreon episodes that are coming out this month. We've got Eating Raoul from 1982. Conan the Barbarian is one of our shorts from 1982. And Christmas Story Christmas, we're going to do a quick short episode on that one as well. Last week, there was a special episode that would have come out, or just a few days ago, actually would have come out. I got to sit down with a comic writer and artist who was heavily inspired by Dave Stevens, the creator of The Rocketeer, and we just kind of talked about the 40th anniversary of The Rocketeer as a character. So that was a lot of fun. That episode will have come out a couple of days ago as of the release of this one. Next week, we've got the biopic on Babe Ruth, The Babe. And then coming up in a couple weeks, we've got All I Want for Christmas. We've got Home Alone 2. And we're finishing off December with The Muppet Christmas Carol. I also have, and I'm not even going to tell anybody here, I think I'm just going to do a little something by myself. I have a special episode that I'm going to put out on Christmas Day. It's going to be my little gift to everybody else. I'm going to put one out on Christmas Day, but I'm not even going to tell you what it is yet, but it is going to be a lot of fun. I think everybody's going to enjoy it. So we're going to end the year off with Muppet Christmas Carol, and then starting up strong, the next week after that, we start 1993 with Jurassic Park, and then the week after is going to be Matinee. So we've got a really great start for January coming up. So.
Yeah, I'm working on some trivia and 3 questions for Muppet Christmas Carol.
There you go. Awesome. Very, very cool. All right. Everybody, thank you so much for being here. Again, thank you all. Thank you, Podrick, Patrick, Bo, Jeff. So much fun talking with you guys. Everybody, Merry Christmas. I mean, it's coming up in like 3 weeks from now, but Merry Christmas. Be excellent to each other. Go watch some good movies. Go watch Santa Claus, the movie. And we will see you back here next time.